Hey everyone, welcome back to the Questioning Behaviour podcast. As always, it's me, Merle, and I'm here with my much better half, Sarah Bowen.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying.
Now we are immediately also joined by another absolutely amazing guest, which I'm very excited about. We are joined by Carolyn Freeman. And as always, let's just dive straight into it. Carolyn, please tell the crowd, who are you, what do you do, and how did you get there?
Thank you, Merle. I'm Carolyn Freeman. I started off actually in my career as a marketer and did a number of years, 15 years actually, in corporate marketing. And part of that, one of my biggest interests in marketing was around behavior and consumer behavior in particular, and why people actually bought things rather than just the fact they did, why they bought one thing, not another. And that really got me interested in the psychology side of things. And when marketing went more towards the digital marketing and behavior or kind of the analytics behind marketing, I kind of decided it was time to leave. So I went back to university and retrained as a psychologist and did an undergrad in psychology at Open University. At the same time, I was also lecturing at Bournemouth University part-time in marketing communications. And I stumbled across behavioural science as part of that. And then when I finished my undergrad, I also then stumbled across cyberpsychology. Someone mentioned it to me just in a random conversation. And I went straight home and spent the next day just Googling cyberpsychology and bought a book on cyberpsychology, and that was me hooked. So I then went and looked at a master's because I was thinking of doing a master's, and I was originally looking at forensic psychology, but then there was no option for me other than to do cyberpsychology, and did a research master's at Buckingham University and just finished in the summer this year, 2021. So I'm officially a cyberpsychologist, and in terms of behavioral science, understanding why people do what they do with technology, and specifically around remote and hybrid working, because that's really where my research was focused in lockdown one, on how parents engage with technology after hours, both personal and work-based technology. So that's what got me where I am.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's first of all awesome. Second of all, congratulations on finishing the master. And third of all,
thank you very much.
Do you often decide things on such a whim? Like, I've had one conversation, I got immediately hooked. Like, I relate. That is me very well described. Yeah. But I mean, for a career path, it's quite a spur of the moment type decision. But so far, it's working out then.
Yeah, it was, but it wasn't, because I spend a lot of time investigating and searching, and then something just clicks. And I've always loved technology. I've always been the techno geek in the family. And this was me searching for something that I'd really be interested in with doing masters. And when someone told me about this, it was like a light bulb moment. So maybe there are little light bulb moments that I just pursue and then go, yes, this is me. So it's just finding the right thing after a bit of investigation into various things and going, oh yes, that could be interesting, but no, this is perfect. So I think sometimes there are those moments of absolutely, I found something that fits my love of technology and my love of psychology into one, and
that's such a good feeling. Such a good feeling. And I'm interested because I guess nowadays technology is all around us, right? It's very difficult not to interact with technology. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, what makes a sort of a cyber psychologist's approach to viewing the world or viewing problems different from just a psychologist? Like, how would you define that?
I think it's really about having a look from a different perspective, because a psychologist uses, I'd say, older ways of looking at psychology, or traditional ways of looking at psychology, all around human behavior, whereas cyber psychologist looks at it, well, how are people engaging in the technology, and how does that change their behavior? So it's kind of a different viewpoint. And one of the things that I one of the sayings that I really love is that we create tools and tools make us. So it's really looking at how that technology has changed our behavior rather than just the fundamentals of our behavior and how that's changing over time. So it's not really a biological viewpoint or a social viewpoint, although there's some social stuff in that. It's really looking at what has changed in us because of technology, and how we then behaving and how we interacting with others and how we doing things because of technology. So it's just a slightly different viewpoint, really. And the thing is that cyber psychology covers every single area of technology, or every single area of life. So we do a very big overview of psychology. And I think it's because it's such a new field that we do that at the moment. But the more people that get into it, the more siloed we will become in how we view technology and how we view behavior and technology.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So which silo or which aspect of life or which specific type of technology has your preference? If you had to opt into a silo, which silo would you choose?
Well, I've kind of chosen my silo, actually, in that because I've had corporate experience and because I come from that background, for me, it was a natural shift into looking at how technology impacts us as knowledge workers and how we use technology to do work, but also how it then impacts how we do work and how it then impacts who we are as knowledge workers. So I've as soon as I started my research project, I'd already siloed myself into that. And also because those who do academic research and the cyber psychologists do look at technology, really look at gaming, VR, and social media. And I wanted to be different. I wanted to be unique in the field. So I didn't find anyone in cyber psychology who was researching this part of it, although there's lots of different people in different fields who look at human behavior and technology. I couldn't find a cyber psychologist who did this. So I thought, actually, this is a gap in the market. I've got the credentials from a corporate perspective, and then I've got the credentials from a psychology perspective, and then a technology perspective to really focus on that. So that's really why I chose this, because I can easily translate academic research into real world usage, for lack of a better terminology.
No, I think real world usage or real world application does seem to be the aim of the game. So no, that's absolutely great. Yeah. So anything you can tell us about your work or your findings so far, because I'm very interested.
Well, it's still kind of new research, and there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be found out. But one of the key findings that I was really interested in is how we segment work and home technology. And because the pandemic shifted us so dramatically into a combining work and home life, people who wanted to separate out their work technology from their home technology weren't able to do that anymore. And they abandoned every segmentation strategy that they had when they were actually driving into work. Because when you're driving into work, you kind of transition into this work mode, this work personality, this work mindset. Then when you're driving home, you use that time to transition back into this whatever persona you take on. So it's wife, mother, daughter, friend, you transition into that persona, but we weren't given that opportunity. And right in the beginning, there was a lot of tweets and social media posts around, I never knew my husband, I never knew my wife was like this. They are this epitome of this person that I don't like at work, because you have to take on a different personality when you're at work. So we just abandoned all the strategies we had before. And it also then meant that our workplace technology really morphed into our home-based time. And that's what caused a lot of stress and anxiety and cognitive exhaustion, was this inability to really separate out those two realms and separate out those two personalities. And we lost the routines that we had around life. And because things have changed so rapidly and so many times in the last 18 months, we haven't had the time to build routines back into our life. So that automatic behavior doesn't work, or we haven't been able to develop automatic behavior. So we're constantly thinking about what we have to do every single day. And it's just exhausting. And we don't have the amount of headspace and cognitive ability and energy to really focus on our work and being productive. So that's one big thing. And the other is that we're now working during our traditional transition time between work and home. And the research that's not mine, but the research that has come out shows that actually we am not any more productive for working those extra hour or 2 hours of commute time. And it's better really to spend that traditional commute time doing something that you would otherwise have done. So listening to a podcast, listening to the radio, sitting down and reading a book like you would in a train, and using that time to give yourself the ability to transition. So those are two big things which really fascinate me around technology and using home and work technology. And actually, the third little thing was that a lot of academics are only really focusing on the old technology, such as emails and Blackberries.
Sure.
And actually, in the
do
corporate
Blackberries still
world,
exist?
Exactly. So that was a lot of research was just around telephones or mobiles and emails. And actually, there's so much more technology we're using now. So there's voicemails or voice recording messages, and there's all the team-based technology where we doing project management teamwork. So there was no research done on that either. So it felt a lot like academic research was quite a few years behind actually where we are as corporates. And that was really frustrating for me because we really need to give, especially now, we need to give businesses real-time information. And so as academics, we need to speed up, really, the research that we're doing and make it more relevant and not just research students, because students aren't knowledge workers, they are students. So, it's kind of just having relevant research for me is really important, and being able to get that research out into the real world. So normal people, I say normal people as non-academics, not non-academics are normal, but you know what I mean, is that people who are not doing research full time actually have access to this really incredible insight that the academics are researching and finding out.
Absolutely.
That's a very long answer.
It was a very good answer. Very good answer.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, are you sort of on the front line of generating this knowledge as well? Are you designing research to actually answer these types of questions that are in demand?
Yes and no, Sarah. I'm kind of my plan and part of setting up the website and the business that I have is to take this really rich research that academics are pulling out and make it accessible to the general public. And that's really my goal going forward, is to do meta-analysis of the research we've done, but also then take research that corporates have done and bring that into the or what was publicly available, bring that into public domain, so that Joe public knowledge worker actually has access to this and can make informed decisions rather than guesswork or research group of one. So I find the research process so long that it frustrates me that I can't get enough information out to people. So it's kind of taking the insights that those who are really good at research are doing and translating that into layman's terms, and so that knowledge workers and HR people and policymakers and corporates and those who develop workshops and training can actually have access to real world academic scientific knowledge to make real world choices and real world well-informed decisions.
I mean, it's an extremely valuable pursuit, I think. If the research is out there but people don't know about it or can't access it, then what good is it, in that sense? Because a lot of the academic research is behind firewalls and academic journals, which is so frustrating for me because and I think it's probably frustrating for academics as well, as they've spent all this time and energy and effort and they've got so much incredible insight, but it's stuck, and the only way for them to get their stuff out there is to actually publish in academic journals. And I'd love to find a way to take the things that aren't published in academic journals and give access, because there is a lot of stuff that's some peer-reviewed people don't find very interesting, or editors of academic journals don't find interesting, but actually are very interesting and relevant for knowledge workers. So this is my pursuit. So it's not doing physical research as such, but finding the research that is useful and helpful and relevant and insightful and needed. Fantastic. And so, I mean, we could have a discussion about the perils of open science in brackets, air quotes, and the sort of bias in publishing of only publishing results, and how this sort of system that tries, I guess, to promote quality of academic research, as a consequence, we end up reading research that's sort of 4 years out of date.
Minimal.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very long conversation, but yeah, I'm totally with you with the frustration.
Also with technology, because it changes so quickly. 4 years is a lifetime with technology advances. We don't have that kind of time to wait 4 years.
No, but I think it's a very valid point, though, to argue that some fields don't lend itself to the academic publication process because they move too quickly. So in that case, knowing this, do you think the most valued research in your field will almost exclusively be driven by corporate?
I don't think exclusively, but I think the most recent or the most up-to-date or the most valid research will be driven by corporates because they've got a high turnover. And I think the other thing is, to go back to your point, Sarah, about quality of research and quality of findings. I think there is a real balance there, because yes, you do want those quality of findings, but on the other side is that you in the meantime, waiting for the research, a lot of people make assumptions, and those assumptions from gut feelings from whoever then become narratives. And even if the research comes out, it's very hard then to break that narrative and break that mindset of this is how things happen. So I think there is a balance, especially in, as you say, Merle, in terms of the fields that are fast moving. You kind of need to get something out there and start that narrative in the good trajectory, rather than having a narrative that's going the wrong way. And then you almost sound like a conspiracy theorist coming and saying, well, actually, that's not the way you do it. And then you've got to break all those old heuristics around how we do things and why we do things. And that's a much bigger process much bigger battle to fight. So I think there is a balance. And I'd actually almost rather get some kind of research out there that sets the narrative going in the right direction than nothing for 4 years. And then, by the way, okay, no, the majority of the population believes something completely different.
Right. Yeah. It's a really important point, especially because, all the research on belief formation sort of tells us that it's very sort of easy for someone to form an initial belief when they have no priors about it, but then getting them to change their mind is a much bigger task. So, I mean, which sort of corporate research bodies out there are doing really good research right now? Because I can't think of any off the top of my head, and I feel that's quite sad.
Well, McKinsey is doing quite a lot. There's quite a lot with MIT. They're publishing a lot around remote work. There's not very much being researched around technology and remote work.
Right.
I'm really struggling to find that. And I was hoping MIT would do quite a bit of that stuff, but they're going down the AI route rather than actually human-based technology remote working. But no, there's not a lot. I've really got to scratch around for it. And yeah, there's a few people who in behavioral science who are actually starting to look at remote working as well. But then they look at the remote working side rather than technology around remote work and remote workers and knowledge workers who are doing hybrid stuff. So yeah, more needs to be done. I'm desperately trying to recruit people into this, desperately. But they're not listening.
This is your call. Yeah, this is your public call to anyone listening.
Yeah. Please do cyberpsychology and technology around human behavior and remote and hybrid working, please.
Yes. If anyone wants to answer that call. Yes.
In this cult, if necessary.
Or resistance. I don't know.
Or resistance.
I was about to say maybe we should not make any associations with more midsummer-esque things. Maybe we should let's make it a movement, not a cult.
Let's make him a movement. Yes.
That sounds softer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you been working from home? Have you sort of felt that sometimes it's a little bit sort of me-searchy, like you're sort of seeing the insights that you're sort of collecting reflected in your own behavior and experiences?
That's a really good term. I haven't heard that before. Yes, me searchy. I think because I've worked from home for the last 10 years, really, since I gave up corporate life, there's a lot of things that I've learned along the way. So there is a research group of one, and there's things that I'm discovering about myself that I'm going, oh, I wonder if that's the same for everyone else. And one of those was around needing to create rhythms and routines in the week, that like we do at work. Because there's seasons in the year, there's rituals that we have, there's celebrations that we have, and we have them for a reason, because we kind of need to anchor ourselves in time. And I have been wondering if that's part of why people have felt this last 18 months have blurred, because they don't have the rituals and the routines that normally map out a year. And I wonder if that's part of why people struggle around the automated behaviour issues, is that they don't have these rhythms. And I don't like the word routines because it sounds very dictatorial, but the rhythms of the week and the rhythms of our day and the rhythms of the month and the year are important for us as humans. And I think that's part of what we've lost. And it's something that I recognize in myself, the need to create a rhythm for the day and the week, and set in place these blocks of time that are the same every working day and the same every working or weekend, to give myself that structure that I can then say, okay, now it's breakfast time, now it's lunchtime, now it's going for a walk time, now it's walking the dog time, now it's, and then the rest of the time my head is freed up to do productive, deep work.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's something I want to research going forward. This is my big thing, is how the rhythms of our day impact our remote and hybrid working life.
No, it's a really interesting question and super relevant. I guess most people listening to this may have experience working from home and sort of can feel that, you know, your experience reflected in their own experience. And we do always have that question of, is that the same for everyone, or is that just me? Is that the human experience? And so I'm wondering, like, I write at a bit earlier on, you were talking about the challenge of sort of dividing the home from the work, you know, whether it's in terms of giving yourself a chance to get into the right mindset, whether that was sort of physical travel or, like, you know, location difference, you know, physical space, like moving from one space to another. How does sort of technology, or how could technology, you know, help us at home when we don't necessarily have the luxury of, you know, working in a different physical space, or, you know, traveling to the office doesn't seem quite as much of a I don't know, much of a transitionary state when you're just walking down the stairs or walking down the hall. So, you know, how can technology help, do you think, in reestablishing that for us?
Yeah. I normally recommend to people to have separate technology for work and home stuff. So my laptop is work. I don't take it out at all during home time. So when I open my laptop, I'm working. When I close it, I'm not working. So I don't open it on weekends to Google or whatever. This is my transition time. This is my routine of I'm now working. And then my phone doesn't have emails or social media on it.
Clever.
And for the sole reason that it's a phone, it's not a portal to the world. And that helps me to give me that space of, actually, I'm not going to look at my emails at 10 o'clock at night just before I go to sleep. I'm not going to, on Sunday afternoons, open my emails on my phone, because when you check a notification, it's so easy to see the little red dot and go, oh, let me just check that quickly. And you spiral into 3 hours later, you're still looking at the email. And then you can't get to sleep because you're so worried about this thing you have to answer. So I've purposely haven't loaded emails, and I don't have social media on my phone. It means that I have to make extra effort. If I'm driving somewhere, I need to print out the address before I go, or write it down. And that's okay. It's a ritual that I have of, I can't look at my phone to find out where the address is last minute. So I make a little bit of extra effort. It also means that if I do want to check my emails on the weekend, I have to go to my laptop and open it up. I'm now working. And then I close it again. So there's a real definitive headspace of no, you're not working anymore, you can't look at emails. It takes a little bit more effort. You're less likely to actually look at emails. So you can really use technology to give you that headspace of, this is my phone is personal, my laptop is work. If you do need to look at emails out of your phone, have a separate phone. It costs £5 to get an extra SIM card from some places, or get a pay-as-you-go. That's work. So you shut it down in the evenings, and you leave it. You don't pick it up until the following Monday. I have an iPad that I use as entertainment. So if I want to read a book or watch a movie or something, that's my iPad. I don't open my laptop to do that. So it's being strategic about how you use technology to give you that differentiation between work and home. The issue is that the majority of people consolidate everything onto one device. And they have one phone that's got everything on it. So they don't have that mental separation between the two. And they open their laptops at 10 o'clock at night to just watch a movie or something, and then suddenly they see something. So it's actually giving yourself discipline around how you use technology. And actually, it's quite easy after a while. Like any habit, it takes time. In the beginning, I was so tempted to constantly open my laptop, and I really struggle sometimes. I kind of look at my phone and go, why don't I have email on here? But actually, then I remind myself, no, it's for my own mental health. It's for my own ability to cognitively switch off and give my brain time to re-energize so I can be productive the next day. And it's tough. It is tough because I had those work habits. I had that life habits of all the stuff that most people do. And it takes effort to separate it out, but it's so worth it, because you're so much more productive and focused during the day when you're at work with your laptop open, and so much more present at home. And the other thing, which is my absolute favorite, is not having a phone out when you're with people. So when I go out for dinner, when I'm out, I never take my phone out of my bag. And for me, it's a control thing. I'm controlling you, Mr. Phone. You're not coming out to disturb my time with other people. And there's no technology at the table or in the living room. It stays somewhere else, because it's about being present. Because the research shows that even the presence of a mobile phone can distract you from being fully present in the conversation.
Right. Okay.
So not having it visually present is very important for you to actually be there for yourself and for the other person, to say to them, someone on Twitter who I've never met in my life is more important to actually being here with you, who I want to spend time with and build a long-term relationship and friendship with.
Right.
So use technology to manage your life. Take back control of it. Don't let it run you and the way that you do life.
Yeah. I bet you're not a fan of those smartwatches that just ping on your watch, ping on your wrist.
No. Well, because I've got a smartwatch, but it's a glorified pedometer and a heart rate monitor. That's it. If you want get a glorified pedometer. Don't get an iWatch. It's going to constantly keep you in the state of always on, always available, which actually was the title of my dissertation, was that that's what it gets you to do, is just you never switch off, ever.
Yeah.
You're always available to everyone, wherever. Even notifications, you're available to them. Why are you making yourself voluntarily available to BBC notifications? Because what you're doing is spending your time and your resources making someone else money. And that's not okay. Spend your time doing something for you, not for someone else. Because that's what notifications do, is make money for someone else.
I'm just very curious. So you've already mentioned the smartwatch or the iWatch or whatever the thing's called these days. Is there another technology that is so incredibly common, where you're genuinely, from the cyberpsychology perspective, you're genuinely wondering whether there is, if any, a benefit to having that technology, where there's just many more disadvantages than there is actual benefits?
I'd have to just go back to the smartwatch. I think for me, there isn't a real big benefit, because if you've got your phone with you all the time, why do you need to be told that someone's sent you, or some random company has sent you a notification? I can see the benefit. I understand the benefit for those who want to be constantly connected. I get it. but the disadvantages for me completely outweigh the advantages of having it. From a psychological point of view, from a not being able to switch off and not being fully present point of view. I think as humans, we need to be fully present wherever we are. And yes, there's time for technology and there's time to get lost and time to kind of give our brains a break creatively or whatever it is. But actually, there's also importance in being fully present and available to yourself as well as to others. And one of the things I think we've really lost is the ability to be bored. And we fear being bored and we fear not having time in our own headspace. And we've lost, therefore, I think, the ability to be creative and have the ability to think divergently and think logically. Because if you think about it, when you're out walking or in the shower, that's when you have your most creative ideas. But we've replaced that bored time with entertainment time. And so we never give our brains the opportunity to really think creatively or think laterally or come up with solutions. So therefore, we have to find other people or other websites to give us the solutions that actually we could probably come up with ourselves if we just give ourselves time to be bored.
And I was just having a thought just based on something you said earlier about, how, looking at a notification that's making someone else money. How much thinking have you done around the idea that a lot of technology is produced by companies with incentives that might not necessarily align with the goal of like enhancing, an individual's well-being, right? There is, whether it is they want your attention because that's their revenue stream, or whether it's because they want to make you reliant and dependent on their technology so that you upgrade and get the next model. And if, your bit of technology breaks, then you still give money back to that company. How do you think that is sort of, how does that interplay? Does it interplay at all in terms of how we use technology or the sort of the strategies in which we can use technology to our own personal benefit as opposed to the benefit of corporations?
Social Dilemma is one of my favorite movies these days, outside of Ready Player One. But in the Social Dilemma, I actually just rewatched it this week because I'd forgotten most of it. But one of the things that they said is when they first started out with this technology, it was really human-centered, but it very quickly shifted to a productivity-centered model. And so for me, and having a look at a lot of the social media, a lot of the technology is really around how do we get data, how do we get eyeball time in order to make more money? And it really is focused on that. And if you just look at how much money these tech giants have made in the last 18 months, it's astronomical. And I think there's an element of greed in that. And once you start getting power and greed, it's very difficult to step back from that. So because of all the strategies that they use and the behavioral science they use, really, and psychology that they use to get people to spend more time on their technology, engaging with it, liking it, looking at it, looking at more adverts, I think we've become more hooked. And our natural dopamine levels and our natural kind of habits have changed to the degree that we struggle to let go of it. And it was a bit of a revelation for me, just from I started randomly playing a phone game. And I got to the point I realized I was taking time away from my family. And that's when I was quite far advanced in the game. I hadn't spent any money on it, but I'd spent a lot of time playing it. So there was a lot of buy-in that I'd already given to it and a lot of my time resource that I'd given. So there was, it was tough for me to do, but I just decided to delete the whole thing because I realized I couldn't pull back from it. I had to completely take it out. And in my head, I was thinking, I can either spend my time making money for someone else, or I can spend my time making money for me. And that's when the whole revelation shifted. I'm like, wow, this is what they've got us doing, is spending time, us giving up our time resource so that they can make financial money. And this is the exchange we're making, is our time for their money and our headspace and our eyeball space. So one of the things that, where I'm going for 2021 is I'm going to be going down the route of looking at de-slaving from technology. So it's digital de-slaving. It's about taking back control and putting in place routines and rhythms that we now are the masters of the technology, and we use it for our benefit, because there's a lot of things we can use rather than it being enslaved to technology. So it's giving people those tools, if they choose to use them, to take back control and delineate work and home and use technology to be productive and be present and engage with others. But actually, I'm in control. And I have those, yes, I'm going to let go and I'm going to do silly stuff with technology. I say silly stuff, watch a movie or do, because there are times when I do open my laptop on a Saturday morning and watch a movie because I just feel like it. But it's my decision.
Right.
It's not my addiction. It's my decision.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, that is all really, really interesting. I've got several questions coming from what you just said, because there's a lot to unpack. I guess my very first question is, to do digital de-enslavement or deslavement, do you do that with the application of other forms of technology? Like, how far are we going to spiral here?
Yeah, you have to use technology to get to people. It just is what it is. But it's about saying, actually, I'm going to use technology for my advantage, and I am going to use it to get to people. It's almost like if you need to go into slums to order to find the people to help. You're not going to get them to come out to the palaces to. You have to go to where they're at to give them the tools and technology to bring them out. So yes, I am going to use technology to reach people, but it's then saying, okay, you're in this place. How can we help you get out of this place? What can we do to help you help yourself through this process?
Right. So is that like an online program? Would that be an app? Is that like an actual physical manifestation of tech? What are we working towards here?
Well, it's kind of maybe already answering a question you may have for later on, but it's using a website to really start building blog posts and workshops so that people can go through, can read the blog posts, get some insights, understand why it's happening to them, and then also do the workshops. And also, I am kind of writing a book like most people kind of seem to want to do, or I'm trying to write a book about de-slaving, and then doing a lot of social media stuff as well, trying to get the word out there and getting people thinking and
all the technology.
I think part of it is making people realize that they're in this place. It's kind of switching the light bulb on and going, actually, that sounds like me. That does sound like I am a slave to technology.
I did feel very attacked when you mentioned very specifically that everything is in one place and you're watching a movie at night on the laptop that you just spent a minimum of 8 hours sitting behind for work, and your phone is constantly on, and your phone's on the table, and you might be on Twitter whilst you're with your family. And actually, when push comes to shove, you're a terrible human being and you should fix yourself. No, I relate to that fully.
Oh, that went dark.
So sometimes, no, but I feel like once you become very aware of these behaviors, especially as Carolyn just said, you are making someone else money by at the same time not making yourself any money and hampering your own personal growth, and also not spending time on the things that, if you ask yourself, what would I prioritize? Technology would be very low on the list. Social media wouldn't be particularly high either. Whereas spending time with family, your own personal growth, your own business, that would be very high on the list. But your behavior and your actions are just not reflective of that priority set. I think that's a really, really interesting point. I think it would be a very good light bulb moment or a wake-up call for a lot of people. I think the other question that I have coming from what we just discussed is it's very clear that a lot of these more personal life technologies, such as social media, such as the smartwatch, etc., are not to everyone's equal benefit, to put it nicely. How about certain work technologies? Because obviously you study working remotely, so we're looking at computer and laptop usage, email notifications on your phone, constant access through all of your technological devices, but also things like Teams, Zoom, Slack, things that, especially Slack, is starting to almost become like Facebook for work, which quite frankly, I hate Slack, so I don't use it. But what is happening from that perspective? What insights can you give from there? Because if this is starting to look more like social media, that will have some problems, I'm assuming.
Yes, it will. And I think there's two things. The one is about the actual technology and the other is about the software. So I talk about the technology as the hardware. So the research shows that if a company buys someone and gives them a phone and a laptop, it's like they feel obliged to spend more time on it. It's the whole thing of they've given me, so I need to give back. So there's more people are more likely to work harder if they use workplace tech. Software, there is a norm around workplace norm around if someone emails me, or especially from a remote working, if someone emails me at 10 o'clock at night, I need to signal to them that I'm available. And I need to show that I'm actually productive and working. So people are more likely to work longer hours and commit to work that they wouldn't normally commit to. So they spend more time doing stuff and they're a lot busier than they would have otherwise if they were actually going into the office, because they feel they need to signal to people that they're available, but also they need to show people that they are productive. Because even research prior to the pandemic showed that managers see those who are remote working as not committed, not productive. They're less likely to be promoted. They're less likely to be seen as someone who's good for the company culture. So even if the majority of people are doing hybrid or remote working, I think there's still that mindset around, are they being productive enough? And are they actually doing the work? Because they probably are just sitting in their bedroom reading or not doing the work. Whereas workers who are working from home often have to signal that actually they are being productive. Yes, I am still here. So I think Slack is perpetuating that whole mindset of if someone is posting something at 8 o'clock at night, I need to show that I'm a team player. And if I only answer it at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, does that look like I'm not being productive and I'm not part of the team and I'm not actually engaging in this productivity process? And there are some people who are workaholics and want to be doing that, and that's okay. But for those who want to separate out their work and home life and actually be fully present for their children or their spouse or themselves at night, they feel they can't do that. So I think there's a really toxic mindset happening around things like Slack. And one of the things that I suggest to teams is that they sit down and agree amongst themselves what the norms and expectations are around technology engagement, both before and after work. And also there might be some people who need to work from 8 to 10 at night because they've got set hard times of childcare between 3 and 7 when their children need to be read to, bathed, fed, and they can't work. They have to be there. So therefore they then go from 8 to 10 o'clock. They answer emails, but they don't expect to reply. Actually, it's okay for someone like me who likes to have set times that actually at 6 o'clock at night, I'm done and now I'm doing my own stuff. And I will reply the next morning. But actually, I don't want to, unless the team knows that I'm going to do that, and this is the way that I operate, I feel as though I need to actually be available at 10 o'clock at night to answer those. So it's kind of having those real set, agreed team structures around when people prefer to work, what they expect in terms of reply, especially if those people are senior roles, and having that out in the open rather than me assuming and thinking
so that there is a potential danger for technology to exacerbate problems that already exist, in the physical workspace, like in the office, about, expectations for how many hours you should be working, or, if you are actually a team player, how much commitment should you be giving the company, how many, parent-teacher conferences should you skip because you need to show that you are a dedicated worker and things like that. So, these are problems that already exist and already are a result of bad management and bad company cultures. But technology and software and hardware, which it can enhance the observability of workers, or can make people feel watched. And these are all things that can exacerbate problems that already exist. Is that is that fair to say?
That is, and I think that's a really great term you use in terms of when you reply on Slack, you are being watched. But it's not, they can't see you, but they see you there. They know that you're still available. So I think there is that feeling of being observed, of being of being available all the time and being seen to be a team player. So there is an underlying current of, are you committed to this job or not? And I think it's not so much the technology and the programming that has, or the applications that have exacerbated it. It's remote and hybrid working that has exacerbated it, because managers generally are trying to communicate in their old way of communicating when they're all face to face. But what they don't realize, you have to change the communication style. And you have to change the way you arrange and manage teams and communication within teams when people are hybrid and remote working. And I think that's where the real crux of the issue lies, is how we're managing people in this process and using technology and having set norms and agreed norms around technology use, and therefore using technology in a positive way rather than letting the behaviors around technology exacerbate already or pre-COVID and pre-remote working mindsets and workplace norms. So it's exacerbating the toxic stuff. But we're not actually sitting up and going, actually, maybe we need to change the way we do things. Maybe we need to reevaluate this. And I think that's part of the kind of turning the lights on for people to realize that this is what's happening. And that's part of my aim, is to say, we need to change the way we see things. And maybe we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing because we don't realize that we're doing things we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
From that perspective, then I'm actually quite curious. So, I mean, it's not the technology exacerbating the problem, it's the fact that we're working from home, and technology is contributing. However, as technology is such a fast-moving field, do you think these problems will be exacerbated further, or that we will be seeing new and maybe even more complex problems as technology continues to evolve? Or do you think we're moving more into a solution rather than an enhanced problem direction?
I think we're currently moving into an enhanced problem direction. It's becoming more toxic. And unless we sit up and realize what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that actually we do need to change our behavior around it becoming a tool rather than a slavement to the tool, I think it's going to become more toxic. It's almost as like we're swirling in the darkness. Instead of actually switching a light on and going, hold on a second, we need to do something about this. And with the way that the environment and the constant changing of work modes is that we actually don't have time. We don't have headspace to sit down and realize what's going on, because we're so busy coping. We're so busy trying to manage. We're so busy trying to get work done while managing and switching and doing that. We don't have time to switch the light on. We don't know we need to switch the light on, because we just don't have time to think about it. And then we don't have time to be bored, so we don't think about it. So we just...
Right. And sometimes the worker doesn't really have the power to change things. It needs to come from a sort of a more managerial top-down route in the corporate structure.
It does. But there's also grassroots revolutions in terms of, if there are enough workers who go, do you know what, actually this is not okay, maybe that we'll have a revolution or a movement rather than a revolution, a movement towards better ways of working. And it will come that those in lower levels will move up to senior management or higher management. So I'm hoping that it will become a trend rather than, maybe we won't change everyone now, but maybe if we change enough people at grassroots level and change the mindsets and the ways of working from that side, they will become the managers.
Right.
And they will change the way we work. That's what I'm hoping.
And I guess if you could convince a manager that a worker with higher well-being is more productive, we can align some incentives in this case. Yeah, because I think the case of, surveillance and sort of a manager's desire to know what their workers are doing and know that their workers are being productive, in air quotes, from home, that desire and sort of to put into place technology that increases surveillance doesn't necessarily increase productivity or increase trust or motivation from the workers' side. So there are definitely, I think, opportunities for us to align some incentives a bit closer and increase workers' well-being, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. And I think from that perspective, we need to move to more of a seeing workers as freelancers perspective. And what I mean by that is that we move to more of a product meeting KPIs rather than how many hours you worked.
Right.
So it's, have you got the job done? Yes, no. Are you building this product? Is this, from a marketing perspective, did we do a good launch? Is the new product actually in store? Yes or no? Rather than how many hours did you work this week?
Right. Goals versus time, and then the preference is definitely on the goals. That makes perfect sense to me. I've always abided by that, but that's mainly because I hate working 8 or 9 hours straight, but that's a very different conversation to be had. Carolyn, I think we've had an absolutely amazing talk. I think you've given us a lot of food for thought, a lot of cool things that we can now dive deeper into. And I'm sure the audience feels exactly the same way, and they also want to do a deep dive, and it will be very much to their benefit to do a deep dive on cyber psychology. So I guess my last question to you is, where can you direct people to get more information on this absolutely fascinating topic, and where can they find you online? This is the moment to plug. Go for it.
Well, there's two ways. The one is in LinkedIn, and then my website is cybercology.com. So yeah, you'll find the website through LinkedIn. Just search for me there and you'll be able to find me. And yeah, come join the conversation, join the movements, ask questions. If there's things that you want to know, ask me, because it'll help me to direct my research and what I'm looking for from an academic perspective, and go find the answers for you if I don't know already.
And we, as always, we will make sure things are linked down below. Carolyn, thank you so much for making the time. It was an absolutely great conversation.
Thank you very much for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it.
So that was our conversation with Carolyn. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for coming on the show and speaking with us and teaching us a new term. We love new terms and new words. Cybercology. Fantastic conversation. Very, very topical. I've been working from home for 2 years now, so this all rang quite true and quite real for me. Definitely a topic I've personally invested a lot of time and thought into. What about you, Merle? For you, what was a standout part of our conversation with Carolyn?
Well, I think just a lot of the stuff that we've also discussed with John came back out. So when we talked to John about passion, that there was the mention that you should kind of figure out what you are doing at home and what you're not doing at home, and keep those parts of your life separate. And we've discussed this with many guests on this podcast. So the fact that this is now coming up again, but also with regards to how you use your technology, I think it's a very natural progression through the type of topics that we've already discussed. But yeah, I make this mistake. I make a lot of these mistakes. I am currently recording this from my laptop, which also has most of my PhD projects on it, which has most of my blog projects on it, which I suppose would be described more as a hobby. And obviously it has my social media accounts, and my Netflix account is linked to this laptop. So when push comes to shove, I am glued to this machine for an abnormal amount of hours per day. And as a result, the separation isn't super clear. And it can definitely have psychological consequences, which I sometimes do struggle with, because when I go to bed and I close my eyes, I can still see my laptop screen, which has to be very concerning.
We covered with Caroline a lot of, I guess, personal strategies that, we could implement ourselves to try and help make us happier and more productive in our lives. I mean, for me personally, sometimes just physically moving my phone out of the same room as me, because I know if my mind starts to wander away from work, I just go on my phone, and then I'm stuck there for 20 minutes until I snap out of it, and can refocus again. So we have this, I guess, extra challenge working from home, that we don't get to transition into a different space, physically and sort of digitally, as you said, sort of using the same equipment. I mean, I'm recording this from my bedroom, so I could just stay in this room for the whole day, for 24 hours, work and sleep, and maybe, go to the toilet once or twice. I will maybe leave my room for that. Yeah, but it's funny how that can affect you sort of, in all sort of aspects of your well-being and your life. And, it's very topical. We could be seeing working from home patterns continue into the future. I'm sure we will. And so the more we know about cybercology, or just in general, the spaces that we work in, the devices that we use, the strategies that we have for ourselves when we're working to try and do as much work or like be as fulfilled as possible, the more we know, the better, really. So I'm excited for the research to develop now that there is such a need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing we discussed now on this episode today was mainly about the hardware. So, the laptop, the phone, the smartwatch, which clear opinions were articulated about the smartwatch. But I think what I would also like to see in this domain is, for example, the effect of things like being constantly on Teams or on Zoom, and how maybe then the social aspects also bleed into the work aspects if you use the same platform for that continuously, even if it's not the same technology. So maybe you use different laptops or devices, but you do use the same program, whether that will have some type of an effect. I'm curious to see that. I'm also curious to see whether these things, for example, like Slack, which I loathe. I have nothing positive to say about Slack, but I'm very curious to see how that ends up working with or against human psychology, with or against productivity. Yeah, I'm just curious to see what comes out of this domain. I think there's still a lot to be uncovered when it comes to working from home, especially in this aspect. So yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye open.
Yeah, for sure. And listener, if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, Caroyln has loads of resources up on her website. We'll link it down below. You can check out some blog posts. There'll be some research link there. So that should be your first port of call, as well as social media we've plugged down below. So you can go and follow Caroyln and be the first to hear about the new research coming out in this field.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, as always, we hope you thought this episode was thought-provoking, interesting, educational, or at least, at the very worst, entertaining. We do try to make this somewhat listenable for you. So I hope it was that, at the bare minimum. And of course, as always, we hope you have a great week.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying. You're the one I love, you're the one I wanna give